I just wanted to come on here. Um, I, this is one of those things where I want to talk about it, but I also want to reserve my thoughts. Um, I think with the news, we're all kind of, there's a lot of uncertainty in the air. Um, so, overall, man, I have a lot of thoughts going in my mind. It's just like a question of where to go first. Um, so I tried to do this, and I just kind of talked and talked until I kind of had kind of arrived at some flow. Um, there's so much about this. Um, I think on the one hand, you have there's so many sides to this. It's so packed. It's so complicated as far as the kind of mindset going into this. Um, but there is a core, and on one side, there's a discipline, a social discipline, in something that one can argue is, um, I suppose, more leaning universal, which is to have a social consideration for people and their choices. And by doing so, you thus kind of remove yourself, whatever whatever you kind of fall in as far as um, the subject matter overall, that you have the discipline, you practice discipline of allowing people to have that choice, and to understand why, if anything, the choice, and that instead of it becoming about what the subject is, but it's more in consideration that that social consideration, that in removing kind of your ego from the equation. Um, this is what I believe that choice does. It's no matter how I truly believe that no matter how strong your beliefs are about the subject matter, that um, there's an argument for that social consideration, and to regard that as a choice that people are free to make. Um, and I think it's an admirable practice. And then you have another side, the other side, the oppositional side of that, in which, and well, this is where it kind of gets complicated when we talk about politics, when we talk about um, and where does law come in, where does sanction come in, um, and and when the state comes in, when the government comes in. But there is a core, an argument, a feeling, and I want to say on one of those, in one of those cores, it's people that believe that they're saving lives. There's a belief that they're genuinely saving lives, um, and the origins of their beliefs, which ultimately lead in many ways to that conclusion. Um, that's another social discipline, another kind of foundational frame that they get, that many you can probably argue largely, um, there's a measure of where religion goes into that. Um, there's a certain, this kind of, it kind of feels like my arguments, in terms of people's feelings toward pornography overall. There's a kind of virtue in how we um, go about the sanctity of life, um, and the virtues of how do we go about protecting our offspring, even before they've begun to have their independence. Um, there's a lot of strong feelings going into the very conceit of it all, and anything that is related to offspring, to sex. In this case, these things are tethered. You should very much just expect there to be strong feelings in from the most casual places to the most highest. You're going to find the same people there. Now, where it gets complicated is politics, and that there's a strategic game going into this, um, which resulted via through the Supreme Court. And there's an understanding. There's a whole other political standpoint, that is only in service or in some relations to the core, which I believe is, um, it's found in religion, but is also found in something fundamental, which is people's genuine feelings toward offspring, and how do we go about that sort of thing. Um, I'd be remiss with the subject that I usually kind of go about, that um, this is inherently relevant to the sex industry. I don't want to go too much into it because there's a whole other can of worms that while it is very relevant, this is something that I also realize is going to affect everybody. I don't even necessarily want to make this about the adult industry, um, because I think that's another video. I think that's another topic. Um, right now, we're kind of in the midst of the shakes, and this is something we saw coming. Those who are paying attention, um, and but now that it's reached the surface, there's a lot of conversation of what we do now. Um, it don't, you know what? There's something akin to, remember the whole net neutrality worry. Um, it's similar in that with net neutrality is something that hasn't even um, been legitimized, and to a certain extent, this hasn't really been legitimized either. I mean, that's why it's so shaky. Um, there, well, there is this like opportunity to really um, keep this in hold. I mean, it much like net neutrality. Um, there's all these ideas about um, how deep this should go as far as people being able to make a choice. And like I said, the practice, the discipline of allowing, even if you disagree with people having to go through that process to make those decisions, and those decisions land in something that you find morally, or just at least somewhere ethically in the wrong. Um, that the discipline at least allows for, I think, allows for a lot of nuance, um, just by virtue of taking yourself out of this. But like I said, I mean, this is about people believe that they're saving lives, at least in some core of it. Um, Beliefs are very strong. I mean, this is why, when people, there's a principle that's actually, um, the argument actually begins with the I. It begins with this certainty um, a, about something that's a phenomenon that happens in terms of in this case, in terms of like love being um, there's this idea that all love is conditional. I think it. I think there's a one can argue is a great principle to in a relationship that you want to remove the possibility of it being unconditional, um, to protect yourself, um, to create a relationship and a dynamic that plays best for you and the person and others that are involved. So there's a principle there, but the beliefs is, I think, incorrect. From the simple fact that people's beliefs are can be very unconditional. It is why that statement or that belief about love being unconditional, that's mostly true. But because people have died for their beliefs, people have gone to war and died for their belief. People have been in relationships that became deadly or deadly from the beginning, from its very inception, could have been very deadly. But because of their belief system, people have died. People die for their ideas. Love is, after all, natural things with the added belief, or at least any strong, conceivable um, idea about love. I think the most strongest ones are the ones where there's an understanding that there's a belief, even without that language of belief, that there's an understanding that a person believes in whatever this is. Think about the people of Jonestown. Those people believed in what they were doing. So there's something very dangerous about belief. There's something very intimate about belief. And this is where politics gets involved because there's so many impressionable people that are involved in this. I'm out here looking at people celebrating um, that people's choices were stripped away from them because they believe that they're saving lives, or they believe that because they're conservative, because they belong to this political side, that their tribe had won. You may not even necessarily fully believe in whatever the tribe is about, but you're on that group. And being social creature, that is a matter of being heeding that very notion, um, and creating a situation where you have some conditions, because the problem is unconditional. There is something unconditional about how people go about politics. And you get things like this, and there's no room for nuance. And the weird thing, and that principle of allowing people to have that choice, I think absolutely can protect and can, it doesn't go against your beliefs. It is simply asking these people, whoever believes strongly that they're saving lives, that you understand that not everything has to do with you. Understanding that some decisions, no matter how deadly you find them to be and how egregious you find those things to be, that it's important that you have social consideration and that you can, there's so much you can try to do. But we are talking about people's offsprings, and that's a subject matter that on this very surface people struggle to find any nuance. And whether you occupy or you consider yourself left or right on the political issue when it comes to offspring, I fear that there is an innate incentive to have an emotional reaction that doesn't take into account of circumstances. Um, and look, I'm very. I think it's so important, whether you agree here or there, that you, at the very least, try to sympathize with everyone around this spectrum. Um, and unfortunately, it's like a stalemate. It feels like what the very Roe versus Wade. It seems like in practice, it was like holding it was like holding this great big potential back. It was just closing the door, locking it, and having sufficient amount of energy and to keep whatever was behind it, which is a great big deal of controversy. Um, I wouldn't say necessarily hatred, but just there's a heavy heart behind this door. Excuse my metaphor. I'm what I'm trying to say is that there's something inevitable about it. It only takes and it only took a few things to really happen. If you break down the process, while it was very circumstantial and there was a lot of luck in it, that all they really did is they just removed whatever was blocking that those oppositional sides and just allowing those things to make their decision. Because like, oh, right now it's just like now states can make a decision for everyone within the state. Um, it's very easy to if you belong if you consider yourself progressive, which um, there's progressive and then there's progressive. Um, the individual and then there's politics, there's sociology. Um, as an individual, um, hey, I don't know. You know what? It's one of those things where I don't even know. See, this is where politics gets kind of complicating. Um, the people who made that made the decision, who overturned Roe v. Wade, can't talk. Roe v. Wade, can't even talk. Um, I don't even. You know what? In what I understand. No, scratch that. What I was gonna say is I'm not entirely sure. They have an objective whether they occupy in mindset. I'm not entirely sure. It's not even really important, and I already kind of brought this up that politics, and um, whether they're deliberately doing it, take advantage of people who are going to sway a certain way. It's important that I bring this up about the objective sort of venue that the Supreme and ultimately the Supreme Court should be objective in the decisions that they make. Um, it feels like um, a very anchored win, a very strategic win. It's I don't know. I feel it's a weird feeling because people truly have a great big deal of opposition to the very notion of people being able to make the choice. Politics comes in as they have these political the reason I don't really want to talk about it because I think one people are going to know that it's not even really important what they even personally believe. I just wanted to bring it up because it did come down to the decision came down to a few people. in the end. We all have to deal with this thing because of a few people, um, and how they got there, and it's a real shame, but it's also one of those things where, in going back to what I was saying about it being potentially there, the potential is always there. It's a stalemate in ideology, but a win from that side is strategic. Um, they have the potential there is that there is this great big oppositional thing. I just feel like people are being took advantage of. And instead of there being any sort of nuance, this is about people winning. And but thus the nature of politics, and um, a lot of what goes into sociology, and the people who are put in certain positions, unfortunately, it makes sense. It's grossly objective. I don't know. It's not really the point that I really wanted to make. Um, um, there's a question of how this will stand. Um, I'm worried. I think that's kind of a worry is how much traffic this conversation, this topic is going to gain. Those problems that are going on, that we are anticipating to rise with people and those states. I mean, I'm from Wyoming, so um, I literally live in Wyoming, so it's one of those things where I suspect that's it's going to lean toward more of a it's going to be more stricter. I mean, who knows? I'm not. I'm sure, but I'm also curious to see where that kind of goes. I Other places, there are people that are there are already states that have kind of already backed up and have made that have already kind of stricter laws. So this is just straight up. There's going to be quite a bit of banning going on. Um, there's a whole there's a sense that there isn't a lot of listening. There isn't, as I said, there isn't a lot of nuance in this conversation. Um, so I mean, what there's a lot going on in my mind. There's so many places. There's so many complex ones. Like you don't want to mess this up because you don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want misinformation. You kind of want to stay on point. Um, hmm. There are plenty of strategies one can take, but it would also have to be strategic. It would also um, lining up the a group of people that um, would be um, appropriate candidates for the Supreme Court, making sure that and not only, of course, there's going to be a lot of issues following this. That's not it. It's what what I'm really afraid of is a bit of this losing its potential. Like it's it losing, or there's a bit of its that the energy kind of slows down, that the conversations stop, that there is a contentment with this, or there's a complacency with this decision. And I hope that's not the case. I hope no one is used to the and again with it with one would wisely probably assume, because of the issues that are going to prompt and are prompting from this, that is impossible to forget this. That this will continue to be and will grow in the negative. And so whatever, but it's like people don't even want to wait, because people are going to need the the choice. They're going to need these choices. Um, it feels like it feels like people are. I was going to say, because I was thinking about the Democrats. I was thinking about what are some things that could be done. The immediate stuff is people coming together and making sure and ensuring that people are going to be able to get the help that they need. It's just a real shame. I don't know. This is where I was like, I mm, I'm stumped. I keep thinking about the people who made these decisions, the people who are supposedly against these decisions, and what seems like inaction. The individuals who ultimately sided with this, and curious about what they think about this stuff. If is this just a game? Is this just for politics, or do you guys truly believe that you're saving lives? I do and I don't want to talk about this because I hate coming on here and talking and really having no immediate resolution for it. Um, Not that one is incapable. Who are we aiming this toward? Is this trying to change or try to sway the states? Is this because this is not about changing people's minds. This can't. It would be unwise to think that. Well, it's like if we were going to change this for the better, damn how people feel about it. It's that principle of allowing people to have that choice. Um, and when I was, mentioning about it feels like an inevitable. Not that we. It just feels inevitable in the sense that that potential is always behind that door. These strong beliefs are they're there. This stuff resonates with people in a huge way. Whether they know it, if they have the $5 words for it, people's beliefs. I mean, it is almost a trigger to just bring up people's offspring. I mean, people are. It gets real intense about this sort of thing. Um, and I'm stumped. Here's what I think needs to happen, and what I'm hoping that people want to do this. It's hard to tell, but for those, it almost seems. But then that's the thing. Like, if we're protesting, I don't even know. Like, what? I almost want to come up with something different. I see people protesting, and its results. It's insufficient. It can do quite. It's surprisingly effective in some way, but it's also insufficient in other ways. Um, they're almost taught to not incentivize the change because there really isn't much that comes out of protesting. I, I hate saying that because I think there's some ignorance in it. But that's what it seems like. It seems like protests. There needs to be something. I don't know. It's like the Supreme Court gave us this problem that's there, and you know you almost have to look for this. You have to search hard for the silver lining for this. Maybe that's what I'm trying to do is trying to find the silver lining. So I keep coming back to it's feeling inevitable. Like these people are going to believe the way they believe because people have strong beliefs. People at Jonestown has strong beliefs about this stuff, and you almost have to believe that you're on the correct side of history and trust that. Which okay, easy enough, but you're also trying to look for. Mm, I mean, it's like at this point, it feels like people have to literally go. They literally have to deal with their own state. Um, because like I'm from, like I said, man, I'm in Wyoming. All right, it's a it's an overwhelmingly red. It's a very conservative state, and the most loudest people here, unfortunately, tend to be conservative. They're very nice people, but they're also their politics. You know, like politics tend to be surprising what people side with. They're very nice, but it's like once you get to the politics stuff, it's like a double. It's strange. It's interesting. I don't know. Um, and religion has a huge proponent to this. It has is a major chair to this. But I don't really want to focus too much on the religious stuff. I kind of want to focus on what it does, the result of something like religion. Um, because I fear there's another can of worms. Even if it's relevant, it's also going to be treated like a whole different can of worms. And we can argue about how much the religious angle holds up based on script. I mean, that's like trying to get people to unfollow certain belief systems because they really don't have much life within the original text. That's not really why people are. That's not really what you get with religion. I mean, every culture is a cult. Um, I need to really can like it is. I mean, I think people should try to accept that in some way. I think if you I think it allows for understanding and a little bit more self awareness of how you behave. If you just acknowledge that um, there's going to be customary, but there's something confining about how societies tend to go. So you have these like big, huge social cults, and then you find all these different kind of template thoughts. And the world that people live in, when it comes to their religion, when it comes to their beliefs, in opposition to something that deals with this, is are quite strong. Um, so the angle of trying to change your mind, it's almost like, I don't know, like if you got if you have like, I'm saying this because people who are in politics are not removed from this very, as much as I try to remove that. I've tried to be like, well, I don't even know what they believe, like they might just, but like, even if that's true, that's not even important. Whether they're doing in practice or they truly believe that they're saving lives, that what you're going to find in the highest seats, you're going to find in the casual seats, and you're going to see and find the same people. They it makes sense that you would. Um, this is why so much of this feels like you almost like, how do we get here in the first place? How did Roe v. Wade get established? How, and I'm not talking about necessarily leaning toward the specifics of, but like the mindset, like what what direction are people trying to go? Because I'm questioning, like, what are the Democrats doing? Like, do they not care as much about this? I mean, like, um, or is it, you know, it's hard to tell. With there's so much about this that just seems. I guess there was really. I mean, like I said, I mean, maybe there wasn't much they could do. They just wanted to kind of cover it. They wanted to put a blanket on it as this stuff comes to fruition, and that the only thing they really could do is just um, keep keep a hold in these positions, and that they can. Like, I don't even really want to depend on the Democrats, right? Like how people go about politics, how involved people are in politics. I mean, that also might be relevant. And all right now, it just feels like everyone just doesn't. It's like we all know what happened. It's objective. We all see what's going on. Um, that's one thing. It's like, okay, this is happening now. How do we not make this a thing anymore? Oh, we have to wait. We have to vote. Okay. So until then, we have to like deal with the states, and I don't know. Um, hmm. I don't want to come on here, and I don't want to preach. I don't want to. That might be another video or something. I don't know, but I don't want to come on here. But um, I can say all this without really mentioning the adult industry, because do I really, would I really necessarily have to mention the adult industry? Is it not obvious that this is going to obviously affect the adult industry? Obviously, and this is a trickle down thing, because it's not even just this. You have to wonder what else is going to go on. What other policies are they going to try to eradicate? Are we being obtuse by even suggesting that? Are we are we just going to have to like hold to our ankles until something else is threatened? Um, actions and how to create to kind of get a fire going and get people to be more active in some way. Um, I wonder if people felt would feel, you know, there's a the relationship that people have with media, and more importantly, the relationship that people have with the people in that supreme. I don't even know what to call it, like in the Supreme Court. Those um, it, there's this wide separation, and there's this there's this kind of something untouchable about it. There's something elusive about in that separation between someone like just normal person and being able to make a difference. There's something elusive about it, and there's a safety in where those politics happen in someone like you, and from being where you are and then trying to change something and going through all the red tape. First of all, being heard. You know, I mean, it's probably obvious that this shouldn't be an individual thing. That you whatever you do, you aim to collect as much. But then it's like, then what? Like, you protest, you try to. How do you sway your state? How do you sway people who who are who believe, like, if you're in Wyoming, right? How do you sway people? How do you sway people who have these strong beliefs? If for some other reason they're hell bent on doing what they're doing, and you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out what what the hell can you really do? Maybe that's the first problem, is thinking that you can't do something, and maybe the goal shouldn't be that you're going to change anything. Maybe it shouldn't be about trying to to get in that mindset that um that what you're that the result must be a certain way, that maybe in order to for you to truly kind of get off your ass and do things, that you kind of have to you almost have to kind of get out of this idea that you have to be you have to shed that you have to shed that um that doubt, um with that, anything you do, that you're doing in service to what the goal is. And in this case, trying to sway your state to, kind of maybe negotiate. But again, it's like, you know, there's something discouraging. I mean, like, it's like there's a hierarchy and who gets in and who's being heard and if they take you seriously or not. If you're someone that gets enough credentials, maybe try to sway other people who probably have. Um, it's hard to tell. I'm saying this because I'm trying to think what I can do. I'm literally sitting here thinking about what I can actually do to perhaps change something, to try to do something, and I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to just to realistically think that one could actually do something, because I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait for any. I don't want to wait for the Democrats to. I don't. Do I make phone calls? Do I just like start and then just keep going and try to build up momentum? And that's the word I was looking for. Momentum. Is my fear is that this momentum is going to slow down. People get complacent. People get content. They're this. No matter how egregious stuff is, it took a lot to just arrive where it is even possible to find avenues where we can reach something like Roe versus Wade. It took, in looking at it, there was so much that went into this thing. It was building blocks to get to this point, and it didn't take away. It didn't make it less controversial. It didn't. It didn't like. But and because of the subject matter, it's like it's really difficult for people to find nuance in something like this. So there's something sympathetic about that very notion that people are not going to be swayed on it. And I'm not asking people to change their mind. I'm just asking for people to think about, to have a different. I mean, maybe that's the core issue. Something I'm mentioning is that there is this huge gap between what the goal is. People, pro-choice is people, whether you, however you think about the subject matter, you're you're principled on giving people choices. And then you have another side where there is this like core in that they're saving lives. They believe that they're saving lives. Not only, and not just anybody's life, they're saving the life of the unborn. They're they're and anyone can understand that idea, no matter where it comes from. You that there's a reason why it's so emotionally heavy. There's a reason why it carries this amount of um, momentum behind. I'm gonna keep using that word. Is because of just how serious this stuff is to a lot of people. Um, Whatever ends up happening, whatever's gonna go on, it's not gonna be great. But it's this is a major. I don't even know if it's a setback. People have said that this is a major setback. I don't know. In politics, sure, but again, that potential is there. It never went away. People had this very strong belief of this subject, and the opposition is huge. There's a stalemate almost in this situation. But while I believe I think there are numbers that demonstrate that it's probably more Americans probably believe in pro-choice than the opposite. So there is a progress there, but it's the how intense it is. Is this a setback? This is a this is someone opening that door. This is someone who is allowing states to go with what they believe. Yeah, sure, we're progressive as a but now the door is open, so now we're going to make, because if things were truly progressive, if people truly had this progressive outlet, if those people who are occupying those high seats in those states, if this was truly a progressive society, we wouldn't have to worry about this. This would just be, oh, it's just flip flop, whatever, right? People know where they're what's at. People know what's going on. People know what to do. People on the right side of history and all that stuff. But that's not what it is. A setback. This is now. This is a game. This is a game with two very definitive sides. It is not as simple as It's not like there was a reason why they knew they can do this. There is a while, yes, overall most Americans probably believe in pro-choice overall, but there is a lot. I mean, come on. I mean, that is probably a territorial thing, and who occupies it, and less about like it's obviously very complicating. But in saying that, where Americans are arrive on this stuff, um, the variation is very relevant to why people even wanted to go this way. Why the Supreme Court wanted to go this direction. This was very strategic, planned out. They were elected. They were put in that place by a certain. More often than not, there were more people on the conservative side that were put in that position of a certain presidential seat, and it just seemed to go that direction because that's what they said they were going to go. Something leaked. Now we know what's about to happen. It happened. Um, is this a setback? It is a reflection of something that's already going on. If I would imagine if it was truly progressive, then this wouldn't be that much of a thing. Um, the reason why net neutrality still holds is precisely because at least there's, I'm going to say progressive, but there's there is an object. There is probably more reason to get as many people to have this internet stuff than not. There is less an incentive to take neutrality away from people. Like objectively speaking, it would be less beneficial to everyone. Like no one wants, no one, everyone, people want as many people to have the internet as possible. It wouldn't there really wouldn't be a reason why people would want to take that away. Like there is arguments, but it's like because they want to make a profit. But there's less an incentive to do that. No one wants to do that because it's just no company really benefit from it. I mean, if it happened, sure, but it's like it's not in that direction for obvious reasons. When it comes to this, I mean that can always change. I mean this happened, so we can't just for sure say, well, that will never, you know. But with this, it's obviously with the subject matter and the people that have beliefs in opposition to choices. Um, and of course, you got the religious angle is a huge proponent. It's a huge seat in where people are going to sway. So, but it's similar to net neutrality in that there's a principle that people well understood. There's there's you don't just I mean in that situation you have people who want to make some profit off of charging people with certain internet services, but then you have the other side. You have like this, which deals with not only people in politics in those high seats who put out the internet or who put out politics and stuff like that, but you also have um, hold on. You also have hold on. You also have people who hold on. Give me a second.